Today I'll be giving you something to do while the PlayStation Network is down for maintenance. Today I'm going to show you how to customize a Dualshock 3 controller, in this case with the Transformers theme, with LEDs inside the eyes and custom paint job. Here's some things you're going to need: sandpaper. I got some Krylon Fusion for plastic. There's our LED from Radio Shack. Some wire, a soldering pen, 15 watts. Low wattage will do the job. There's some silver solder. And we'll get to the fake credit card later, as well as the Velcro. And obviously you need a PS3 Dualshock controller. I started taking out the screws already from the back. Save you some time in the video. We got 5 screws. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's been a little while since I opened one. The old controllers, before I get too far ahead here, here's Bumblebee. You can see these little black clips between the R and L buttons up here. That's the old style. Some of you guys may have one of those. They're actually easier to wire up an LED. There seems to be a little bit more room with the computer board inside. There's so many different models of these, so this tutorial might not exactly match what the inside of your controller looks like. Maybe I'll try and sneak in a picture of what some of the older ones looked like. Well, we could do away with this battery for now. Okay, looks like we're still got just the one screw right there to take the board off. Alright, now I'm going to give you this one warning. These little tiny leads that go to the motors, chances are they're going to fall off. They're really thin, especially the older controllers. They seem like a little bit better wire on these, but chances are those leads are going to end up ripping off. You may even want to take your soldering pen, heat up that solder, and just remove them now. It might save you in the long run. Maybe I'll try keeping them on and see what happens. Now this is new. They got clips on the motors. Now the last controllers I used didn't have these clips. They just kind of slide it into place. And the controller before that, the older models, you had to remove 4 screws to get those out. There used to be an additional piece in there too. I can't believe how many different versions they have. Now this type of button, we're not going to get a whole lot of light to transfer through those, so I'm not even going to bother trying to make the light come out of those. Where the clear LEDs are, you want to get your needle nose just up underneath it. You don't want to paint that one. You won't be able to tell what player you are. The back panel, all you got's a sticker. You can use your fingernail or get up underneath there with a razor, and I'll just peel that off and keep that off to the side. It should be able to re-stick once your paint job's completed. Okay, I got my 220 sandpaper here. We're just gonna sand the heck out of this. The Fusion paint says that you don't have to sand, but I think it's a good precaution if you really want this paint to hold up. Just to show a comparison before I start the back, here's the completed front. You want to get that surface as dull looking as possible. You don't necessarily have to sand all the letters off, but especially these sides here, and that goes for the back panel as well. I've noticed I've had to touch both of my controllers up once or twice. Either I overpainted or I didn't sand the sides as much, but with some sweaty palms, that's the first place your paint might wear off. So spend a good amount of time. It probably took me about 15 minutes to get just this front panel almost. Okay, once you're finished sanding, take some mineral spirits. I didn't have any, so I used some rubbing alcohol and cleaned off the case really good and made sure it was air dried. Don't go crazy trying to cover it on the first coat. You're going to regret it later when it starts peeling off in a week. It's just really thin, several coats. Okay, I put a little index card in the center there to try and protect the face. I want it to stay white where that Decepticon symbol is going to go, so now I'm going to try adding some color here. Okay, after some touching up off camera, we've got the three colors, red, white, and blue. Printed out a bunch of Decepticons on business cards that feed right into the printer. And very, very carefully, with a lot of patience, I cut this stencil out here. We're going to use that one for the Decepticon symbol. It's pretty small, as you can see. There's a non-painted finger. Okay, believe it or not, this is the controller. I've cut out the stencil and tried to mask everything off so I don't accidentally overspray anywhere. I just want to get that stencil as flat as I can, and very carefully you're going to give it 1 or 2 coats of spray paint. Okay, here's the front post stencil. I also kind of radiused these little corners in here. I didn't like the way it looked, just plain white, but I wanted the Decepticon symbol to stand out. And the reason it's up so high, I probably would have looked a little bit better lower, because if you look on the back above the start and select button, you don't want the eyes coming too close or right through that piece of plastic. Okay, I let the paint dry overnight, and I also hand painted the gap in the Decepticon stencil eyes. Well, 2 more tools up front I forgot to mention was a drill for the eyes, and we're going to use a Dremel later. But what I did was kind of slanted them on an oval very, very, very carefully, just using drill bits. I don't recommend doing it because the damage you do if you mess up is probably irreversible or really tough to fix. Now what I'm going to do... Oh, and also what I did is I took some white acrylic paint, painted the inside of the eyes so the LED will reflect better off of a white surface versus if you painted a black case. But that fake credit card you've seen in the beginning of the video, I'm going to cut out a clear rectangle and glue it to the back here so you don't get any dust or dirt coming into your controller that you don't want. You don't have to go crazy with the super glue, because if you do too much, it seems like it spreads when it dries, and you don't want it to cloud up the eyes too much. Okay, what I did off camera was just put 2 thin layers of clear coat on the case. Now I'm going to have to remove this touchpad because we're going to have to do some modifications to this white piece of plastic here. Flip this one end up and then carefully pull that one up and around. There's a piece of black foam underneath this. All the do-it-yourselfs on YouTube say don't lose this, because if you lose that, your touchpad's not going to work. So if you're wondering why your controller doesn't work when you put it back together, you may have lost that little piece of foam, or it may have fallen out. Just put that on the side for now. You can see this corner sticking out. I'm going to take my Dremel and grind this down as much as I can, because otherwise when you're doing 2 eyes, the one eye is going to be lit more than the other. I had to go back in and grind this down as best I could. Okay, there's an after shot put back together. You can see the additional plastic is now cleared out behind the touchpad. Okay, now I'm going to solder on the LED to the board here. I've noticed on these new controllers they had repositioned the leads here. The old ones used to go along the bottom here. I believe the first one was negative, second one was positive. You would attach your wires to those first 2. Now it looks like they've just kind of rotated them to the side. Okay, I just tested it out just to make sure. The shorter lead on your LED is going to go to the first one of those connections. I'm going to solder that wire to the first one. The positive, I believe, is the longer one that will go on number 2 down there. If you have the old controllers, the leftmost would be the short one. The next one over would be the long one. Okay, I cut the long leads off and I marked the negative with black and soldered it to my wire. Okay, I'll try and show you as best as I can. I also use some electrical tape around the leads so I don't short anything in case we come into contact. But right behind the USB jack here, you can see where my LED is, and the wires continue down and they do a 180 back here and end up coming back up the top, where we're going to scoot over and get to those leads underneath the battery. The only thing you really want to make sure of, you can see the wires exposed there a little bit, but my analog stick won't come down and hit it. If your analog stick is rubbing, you want to reposition that wire. You're either going to wear it out or you're going to feel it when you're playing with the controller. When you're putting the circuit board back in the front of the controller, I think the hardest part are probably the L and R2 buttons. You want to give them a little bit of slack and they'll slide up into the case. It should feel pretty normal when you get it correctly. Usually you put those in and they kind of flip down inside the case, but you'll have to give it a little bit of slack and just slide them into the front. Okay, here you can see the wires from the LED coming up across the top, and they're soldered to the correct leads. I'll go ahead and try closing the case, putting the buttons back together. Just watch any clearance issues with your wires. You may have to even grind down some of the inside of the case to clear these wires here, but it's better than going through and hitting the analog switches underneath. Okay, the controller's put back together, the LED is working. You want to make sure all the buttons work and they're as sensitive as they should be. Otherwise you may have some problems with that touchpad, that maybe that piece of foam isn't lining up right, or you're just not making the right kind of contact because you squished your wire in there. But just be careful and take your time and have patience. It's doing some kind of Knight Rider syndrome, depending on what angle you look at. One eye is brighter than the other, so I may replace that with a stronger LED that will shine in all directions. But basically the only other thing I add is this piece of Velcro I picked up. It's industrial strength. I picked up at the hardware store. You want something that's going to stick fairly well, and the reason I put those on the back is because of jewelry and things were scraping up the backside with vibrations when the controller would vibrate. So you don't want to go playing with this controller immediately. Let it sit a couple days. I'm going to let it sit a week just to be safe. And take your time. Light coats of paint. If you really load up on the paint, you're going to regret it. If you start playing with it before the paint's dry, you're going to notice the paint's getting soft and peeling away on the outsides. And I've had to retouch mine a couple of times till I learned. But okay, one small mod since finishing. I've replaced that LED with a larger one you could see up on top, and it just fits with these newer Dualshocks. I'm just going to leave it right on top, the USB port there. I also had it apart a couple times, just trying to get the sensitivity of the buttons correct. I had an alcohol swab, just gently cleaning the touchpad. Just make sure you get solid contact with all the buttons. You're probably going to end up reopening the controller a couple times till you get it back to how it's supposed to be. Okay, and there's your finished product with the upgraded red LED. Yeah, it was strange. This must be the newest generation. I never saw a board quite like the one inside there. This is one of the first with the clips in between. That's an obvious giveaway. This was a silver controller at one point, maybe a second or third gen. But this one, completely different. In fact, it had a little bit extra room for a bigger LED. If you've got an older Dualshock, you're not going to have the room to put a larger one up there. But it's no problem because these blue ones are the older ones and they look great. But thanks for watching and good luck to you. Mod at your own risk and take care.